The NCAA tournament is almost here, and Auburn Baseball is going to be a part of it, but not just be a part of it. They're going to be hosting a regional. What we had always hoped for beginning of this season is finally coming to fruition after several years. The Auburn Tigers are not only in the NCAA baseball tournament, but they are going to be hosting a regional, what is going to be a fun start to summer in Auburn, Alabama. So that's what we're going to be discussing here on this live stream. Auburn baseball, their opportunities that lie ahead in the NCAA tournament and the upcoming regional there. All of that's here. Fair game to discuss. Your comments, your questions, your derogatory rebuttals are always appreciated here. And we're going to keep the discussion mainly on baseball. But we got a couple of housekeeping things to touch on in just a little bit as well. But before we do any of that, I want to welcome you back to the channel. Whether you're a member of the Auburn family or you're a fan of another persuasion, we appreciate you being here, hanging out with us, spending some time to talk about what we love about being part of the Auburn family and sharing the whole of the Auburn experience. Right now, as we get started, if you will do a couple things for us, make sure that you smash that like button if you're watching here on YouTube, retweet, share it out on Facebook into Facebook groups. This is our check-in period where you can congregate all of the Auburn family here to continue to grow our little family within the Auburn family. And right now in the chat, post where you're watching from, city, state, international, all of that good stuff. We want to know who is here watching with us right now, even if you're watching on the replay. So do all that for me, and we'll get this show started for you right now. As I said, we're mainly going to be discussing just discussing Auburn baseball and their opportunities in the baseball tournament. I'll give you guys a little bit of a preview. Myself and one of our regulars here on the network, you've heard him before, Dustin Smith, will be doing a podcast tonight, and it'll be available tomorrow, breaking down the end of the season, what led us to this point, and looking ahead into the tournament. Kind of not just a preview, but kind of an all-encompassing as we head into postseason officially for Auburn baseball. He and I will be getting together to talk about that. So be looking for that tomorrow. This is kind of just getting my appetite whetted for discussing that with him today. And I also wanted to get together with you all because this is the housekeeping part of it. If you've known, I've been gone for about a week on vacation. And as you can tell, I might have had a little too much fun, apparently. I have come back from vacation. Obviously, I'm here again in studio. But I came home. I brought a souvenir home with me, a sickness, not the one we all think of, but it is one that's kind of knocked me off my feet for the past couple of days, which is why our content has been limited even past me arriving back. So if you hear me coughing, if I look a little bit tonight, and that's the reason, honestly, this was kind of an impromptu live stream. I usually give you guys lots of heads up, but with me not knowing how I was going to feel, and knowing if I'd have the energy to pull something off tonight, I kind of left it up in the air and just kind of do it on the fly. So that's how we're here. And I'm going to try to keep the energy up as long as I can for you guys. Jack says, I love this baseball team, but I don't see us going super far. Why is that, though, Jack? Is it because of our injuries that we've sustained, especially at pitching? Is it injuries at other positions? Is it the bullpen? What are the reasons why that you think that we won't go far? Obviously, the NCAA thinks highly, or at least the selection committee thinks very highly of Auburn, because if you look at the way that they finished in the last 2 weeks with failing to win the series at Kentucky, with the early exit in the SEC tournament, you can make sense with why maybe they wouldn't put them as a regional. But you can see their body of work, I think, is what ultimately showed the selection committee that they were worthy of being a regional for the first time in a dozen years, I believe, if I'm not mistaken at that. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But I do believe it's the first time in a dozen years that you will see Auburn hosting a regional. It's been long enough that I can barely remember the last time they hosted one, which was 2010, right? So that would have been a dozen years when I was there. TOSA, good to see you. Thanks for being here, sir. Yeah, so it's been a while. Been very much deserved by a team that I think came into this season with a lot of an uphill battle to fight against when you looked at how well the SEC was stacked. So Auburn was really going to need a non-conference performance that was exceptional and to be able to maintain and stay competitive throughout the SEC. And they did each one of those. And I think that's why they find themselves here hosting a regional for the NCAA baseball tournament, which is going to be absolutely fun to be a part of. The worst part about the NCAA baseball tournament to me, though, is the fact that you don't get to experience it with the main student body on campus, because I think that would lend itself, especially the way this is a whole weekend encompassing thing, not just a baseball series, but multiple games. This would have been something to be really cool to have in the middle of, in the middle of a school year, something that everybody could kind of rally around, almost like a tailgate like atmosphere. And I think that's going to happen regardless of what the students being there or not. But I do think it could have lent itself to an even better atmosphere if that would have been during the school year. I'm trying to get this bracket pulled up. That's why I seem a little distracted right now. We're gonna save most of the. I know some of you guys are asking things about football and quarterbacks and stuff. I would encourage you guys to come back tomorrow night. We're going to be doing our general family live stream. We always do those at 8 p.m. Been doing those at 8 p.m. for the longest time. Then we can kind of bounce around a lot, but we're going to focus our discussion on baseball right now. Let's see here. I can't go to the regional this weekend, but all that can go. Creed's home run is still one of my favorite memories of Auburn sports. That was an incredible moment. There's been some great ones in Auburn baseball, and hopefully with names like Sonny DeShera here, who is the co-SEC Player of the Year, we can have even more special moments in this regional. We just can't seem to get away from Florida State, can we? Whether it's going to them for a regional or them coming to us, it's just our lot in life for Florida State and Auburn to be together in baseball. And the trend continues even now to this day with them coming here. Southeastern and UCLA, I believe, are the other two teams, if I have those correctly placed in my mind at this moment. For whatever reason, my bracket is not wanting to pull itself up at the moment, which is very frustrating when you're trying to pull off a live show here. Excuse me. And while you're still overcoming a little bit of a sickness too. But yes, I think it'll be a very challenging regional. I think it'll be a very one that Auburn can't take lightly, but I think they should be expected to get out of, especially hosting it, and move on into super regional play. The question is, can they go further than that? And that's what probably Dusty and I are going to be talking a lot about on the podcast that we'll be doing a little bit later. Speaking of, here he is. He says Cole Foster will be returning this weekend. Wish we could get some more returning pitching as well. I don't know that that's going to happen for us, though, but good to have maybe Cole Foster back into the lineup. Death, taxes, and Auburn and FSU in a baseball regional. It's true. Although, we complain it's brought some great moments to us as Auburn fans, and probably some not so great moments too. But it does, it kind of, it's one of those things where you don't want to see it happen, even if, well, I guess you want to see it happen if it means Auburn gets to a regional, but you kind of would like to see some parity. When they say regionals for the NCAA baseball tournament, they mean regionals. You'll see some of the same teams over and over again if y'all qualify. It's not like basketball regionals where, you may be a team in the Southeast, but you're going to be playing your regional in the Midwest with a bunch of teams from the West. It's completely, when they say regional, they mean regional, except for the case of UCLA, I believe, if I have that correct on here. Let's see. I'm trying to get to the point where I can get everything that I need to pull up. Yes. So our seeds are in obviously Auburn is the number 14 overall seed. Is anybody surprised that they got number 14? I myself was thinking that if we got it, we were going to slide right into number 16. But number 14, I think it continues to show, as I've said at the beginning of this show, their body of work and what it has done to prove that they need needed to be a host regional, even with the way they faltered a little bit in the last 2 weeks. So number 1, Auburn in this regional. Number 2, UCLA. Number 3, Florida State. And number 4, Southeastern Louisiana. Southeastern. I can't remember if it's Southeastern University or Southeastern Louisiana. Excuse me. This year, the regionals were more based on RPI and other stats versus geography, like it has been. I did see that in some areas, but you can't really argue with what happened for the most part with our regional. That's pretty about as regional as you can get outside of UCLA. Does anybody really want to have UCLA in their regional after what they did? The numbers they were putting up with Oregon State. Ironically, the way it lays out, I believe Auburn would be in the Corvallis Super Regional if they made it past that, and Oregon State handled their business. So the two teams that put up a 22-24 game recently, all kinds of offense, that's what Auburn has to contend with. I honestly thought Alabama State was a pick to be in Auburn. They probably could have been. Did they make it at all? To be honest with you, I don't look a whole lot past anybody except Auburn. Let's look. So SWAC, Alabama State made it in. So I'm not sure exactly. Trying to see if I can see really quickly without making this boring where they ended up. If anybody else knows it, you can post it in there. Excuse me. But the regional for Auburn, first game with UCLA and Florida State, the number 2 and number 3 seed respectively in our regional. That's going to be at 11 a.m., which is funny because the opening game is on ESPN2, but you have to have ESPN Plus to watch Auburn's opening game that evening at 7 p.m. It is probably going to be the game that everybody expects Auburn to win, but still. Thank you, Linda. I'm glad to be back. It's part of the reason that I did this random live show with you guys is because I missed you, even though I'm not 100% well yet. I did want to pop in and say hello and at least discuss this for a little bit. And as I've said at the start of the show, we will be doing a podcast, Dustin Smith and myself, talking about this topic that'll be out tomorrow. I'm just trying to make sure that I maintain myself and my energy level for the rest of the night, which is why this is going to be a little bit of a shorter live stream. They're going to Knoxville. Well, we can just pray for them, can we not? I mean, goodness gracious. Nobody wants to go to Knoxville, much less Alabama State. Auburn obviously showed that, and several other teams did as well, that Tennessee is not invincible. But boy, can they put up some offense, and boy, do they have some pitching. And if it's hitting right, there's nobody that's going to beat them. But if you can find them, in one of their weak points and take advantage of it, you can put yourself into a position to beat them. Some of the other interesting storylines coming out of just kind of reacting to the news of everything. There were a lot of discussion about, did Auburn deserve to be a host of a regional over Notre Dame? I don't watch Notre Dame anything hardly, so I can't really speculate on how good or bad they are. To me, the only explanation, as I've already reiterated a lot, as to why Auburn was picked over Notre Dame is probably because their body of work was more solid overall than Notre Dame's. Notre Dame, I can't remember how it is. Do they compete against the ACC like they do in basketball for baseball? That's going to be pretty good competition. I would suspect that maybe their non-conference wasn't as good of a resumes as Auburn's was, whether that means because Auburn played a bunch of easier teams or not. Jack, I think we have a tough time handling the lead and keeping up with the teams that have better pitching staffs. Well, that comes with having a defensive, bullpen that's been a little bit questionable at times. They have definitely had their weak points, but they've also come on strong for us at times we didn't expect them to. So, yes, I think it's not a question of can Auburn score the runs that it needs to win the game. It's a question of can they keep the others from scoring. And that's really been the question all season long. Very few times has it been, well, we lost because we couldn't score enough runs. It's just we couldn't stop them. Damien asked, do you think UCLA will have a chance for super regionals? Well, Damien, I'm guessing, are you a UCLA fan? I don't recognize your name on here, but I know nothing of UCLA except for their amazing performance against Oregon State, also equally Oregon State. If your offense does, if the offense for Oregon State, UCLA, does as well as it did in that game, then they can probably make it to a super regional. But that seems like a kind of a flash in the pan type of performance. So I would say as the number 3 seed in a regional, you probably shouldn't expect to get out to super regionals, but you should at least expect them to make some noise. Now, does that mean that they'll beat Auburn? Does that mean that they'll beat Florida State? I think it'll be a very competitive regional, to me at least. As you all can tell, my voice is already starting to give out a little bit on me. Yes, I kind of just support because I had family attending. Well, there you go. Kind of coming back on some of our other comments here. I mean, if you combine this team's hitters with our previous pitching staff such as Mize and Burns, we'd for sure be heading straight to the college. Well, and that's easy to do, right? We can always say, well, if we had this piece and that piece. Yes. I mean, that's kind of what's happened with Tennessee. They kind of combined both moments in time together. But you have to play with the cards that you are dealt, whether they be good or bad. And sometimes the card that you were dealt that you're like, crap, that's going to be the thing that kills me. Maybe the thing that saves you at the end. You just never know. Can't count it out. And the Notre Dame was in the ACC. So, yeah, when I kind of look at that question, and most people that were questioning whether Auburn or Notre Dame should have been a regional host, the question wasn't, was Auburn good enough? It's just, was Notre Dame the better option, and so on and so forth. That's just my assumption, is basically the resume was better for Auburn overall. Notre Dame had a worse non-conference than us. Georgia Southern got a nod, even though they had a worse RPI than both Auburn and Notre Dame. Well, I know they had a pretty good season. So I know that they were kind of up there, considered a little bit more favorable. A lot of you who have been following our channel during this baseball season know I've been very honest about how I've been kind of out of college baseball coverage, and just me being aware of it in the last couple of years with everything that's been going on. It's just one of those things that slipped out of my purview, handling everything else that was going on with running a business during that time. And this year has kind of been my coming back into the fold of baseball and softball and things like that. And I've quite enjoyed it. So I'm not as up on who is good in baseball and softball as I used to be, but I'm getting back to that point. I know I asked this at the beginning, and understand this is obviously a baseball focus, but I see Jack. We'll cover that tomorrow. I know that's frustrating to keep hearing me say that, but people came here for a baseball commentary, but we'll cover that tomorrow. I promise. So you just come back tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern time. We'll cover everything Auburn. This is more baseball centric stuff. So before my voice gives out, I think we should ask the question, how will Auburn do? This is not necessarily a preview show, but it is kind of us just reacting to the initial conversation of it and what we think about it. So Auburn is the number 1 seed in the Auburn Regional. So if everything goes chalk, you would expect to see Auburn, right, the number 1 seed versus the number 2 seed, UCLA. So back to the question of UCLA, I think I misspoke earlier and said they were the number 3 seed in this regional, being the number 2 seed. It seems like you got a pretty good chance if everything goes chalk. I would say Auburn has a very strong home field advantage, as they tend to do in every sport. So that's going to fight against it. But when you're the number 14 seed overall, you're one of the lower host seeds. That usually means your field's going to be a little bit more competitive. So is this a case where a very offensively capable team like UCLA can come in and shock Auburn? I think it's highly likely that that's a possibility. However, I know what this means to this program, and I know what it means to this specific team. And I don't get the impression that they're going to let anything happen that's going to shock them, their fans. Of course, you got that on posterity now. You can come back and cut that and show that to me later on and say I was wrong when it doesn't work out the way we expected. But I am fully expecting Auburn to make it to super regionals. Past that, everything is up in the air. Being listed into this Corvallis, the Oregon State regional, I think is not the best draw for Auburn, as we've addressed UCLA and Oregon State being very offensively capable as they showed in the Pac-12 tournament. So with that in mind, I do think that getting out of our regional is a solid. But for us to be a super regional host, you would have to have someone with a lower RPI, I believe, come out of the Corvallis regional. So you should plan for this to be the last games in Auburn, but also maybe the last weekend of Auburn. Corey, good to see you, buddy. We're on a little impromptu live stream for just a few more minutes here. I like Auburn's matchup against FSU in Southeastern Louisiana. I don't like the matchup against UCLA. That's similar feelings to me, TOSA. I think obviously they can handle, I say obviously, expectations should be to handle Southeastern. I think expectations should be to handle FSU, but you know the history. So we'll have to just wait and see. UCLA is a little bit scary. They, as we talked about a lot, they can score a lot of points very fast, and with an a pitching staff that has shown the ability to be capable at times, but also the inability to contain the bleeding at times is somewhat of a worry. But overall, I think the expectation should be to get out of the regional. It should be pretty fun. I can see a scenario where Auburn gets the first win, beats whoever the winner out of 2 and 3 is in the second game, and then has to go to 2 games to win the regional. I can also see a scenario where they get shocked in the second game and have to win 2 games themselves in the final day of competition to be able to move on to. Sports with Cord, good to see you, my man. Thanks for hopping in. Let me guess, you have a sinus infection, bronchitis, because I've got the exact same thing right now. I don't know what it is. I know it's not COVID. I said it. Now it's going to get us dinged online. I know for a fact it's not that, but as I've been addressed at the beginning of the show, I was on vacation, came back ready to get things rocking this Monday, and boy, did I go down hard. And I've had this is the most energy I've had the last 48 to 72 hours. So this is why I'm doing this right now. And Dustin and I are doing a podcast, as I've said, about this particular topic that y'all can take up here tomorrow or on the podcast apps. But while I have the energy, for some reason, I'm going to get these things done. I appreciate you being here, Sports with Cord. And Sports with Cord has a pretty cool channel too. You guys need to go check him out if you can. But yes, without getting too far into details, I don't know what it is. It is everything. Fever. I'm not going to go much further than that. But I have quarantined myself into my office and a spare bedroom, and have just been dealing with it, hoping I can get some energy to get some content. So for those of you that are regulars here on this channel, we're going to get back to our regular scheduled programming. My hope is I will be better in the next day or so and can go to Auburn. I'm working on getting into the games if I can. And if not, I will be up in the parking deck with some of the faithful up there watching at least some of the games. Don't know the official schedule yet, but can't miss an opportunity to be in Auburn one last time for a sporting event this season, because that should be the expectation, regardless of what happens in our regional. And that's what will likely happen. So that's just the initial reaction, even though it's a little delayed on our end about the tournament. Hope you guys will tune in tomorrow to Dustin and I's, or Dusty as you know him here, conversation on our podcast discussing Auburn's regular season, what got us to this point, and what it means for the postseason going forward. And we'll have a good conversation there. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm glad to be back in the saddle. On your way out, smash the like button. Check out some of those links in the description, like becoming a channel member here for $1 a month to help support our content, or joining the Booster Club over at patreon.com/E2C Network. Thank you guys for tuning in here. Until I talk to you again, War Eagle.